Hello everybody and welcome to another weekly wrap-up, though in this case it's another double weekly wrap-up because I forgot to film last weekend. Just poof, totally forgot. I don't usually do that, but it was nice to have a week off from videos and stuff. I've still been continuing my internet break for self-care, sanity reasons. But everything's been going very well. I had a lovely week and I've mostly been reading short stories in the past 2 weeks. So I've finished things, but I feel like most of my attention has been on short stories. And I plan to do a February short fiction wrap up because I'm going to be reading a lot of 2016 backlog stories in February and I just want to cover them all in one video. So now, on to novel length things. The first thing I have to mention is Floating Worlds by Cecelia Holland. This is a 1976 science fiction novel. It's not very well known. I didn't like this book very much. I tried to convince myself that I was enjoying it, but mostly I didn't like it, and I'm going to have a separate review on this out in a little bit. I also finished The Weaver by Emmi Itaranta, which is also known under the title The City of Woven Streets, I believe. I was not impressed by this book. I wasn't blown away, but it wasn't like disappointing either. I just found that I forgot it very quickly. I'm trying to think of like what I thought about this book, and I read it a week ago and I have nothing to say about it, which kind of tells you it went through my eyeballs and then out the back of my head. I think Itaranta is really good at atmosphere. The two books I've read by her are kind of quiet, somber, atmospheric, not filled with happiness and joy, a little bit dystopic. The Weaver is fantasy, however. It is set in a secondary world. It's set on an island where people are afraid of a dream plague and they like segregate dreamers and send them away to basically prison. And a woman who's living with the Weavers is a dreamer. She's trying to not be discovered. And one day a woman is discovered who has her tongue cut out. She's been assaulted and mutilated, and she has the main character's name tattooed on her hand, but they don't know why. And then many things start to unravel. I read this in a single day, so it was pretty readable and engaging at the time. I was a little let down by the end because I wasn't sure exactly what was going on, but it was okay. Gene Mapper by Taiyo Fujii. This is a hard science fiction novel translated from Japanese and I loved it. I believe Fujii has a second book coming out in English in March. I forget what it's called, Orbital World, Orbital Planet or something like that. I'm really looking forward to it. I hope it is very similar to Gene Mapper. Gene Mapper is about like a near future where genetically modified crops are the big thing. Everything is gene tweaked. The main character is a gene mapper. He worked on a crop project for a major corporation. Something goes wrong with it, however. It's been infected with outside genes and it's gonna fail, and they don't know why. They have to find out how this happened and how to stop it. I really liked the characters and the story, even though it was pretty thin. Like, there aren't many complications in the plot. It's pretty straightforward, but I really got into a couple of the characters. It was just humorous enough in places for me as well. And the way that the science and technology is handled, I just thought it was really interesting. So I would definitely recommend this for people who like hard science fiction and want to read translated fiction. There doesn't seem to be many choices out there for translated science fiction, so give this one a try. I read Commonwealth by Ann Patchett for my friend Rachel's book club. It was our January-February pick, and I was curious about what Ann Patchett would be like because she's very highly spoken of. However, literary fiction isn't my genre of choice, and I'm not sure this book meant anything to me. It starts off with, you have two families, and the husband in one family has an affair with the wife of the other. They divorce their respective spouses and marry each other, and then their children from their previous marriages, these step-siblings, spend summers with each other, and there's a big time jump after the breakup of their marriages, the initial affair. You jump to like 50 years later when the children are grown up, and then it backfills what happened when they were kids, how they kind of formed this bond with each other despite their parents being terrible at parenting. I I don't like stories where the basis of everything is crappy parenting and the breakdown of marriages. I was more emotionally involved in a couple of the children's storylines, specifically Albie and Jeanette and their bond with each other. I wanted to see a lot more of that, and this is the one disappointment like I can point at and say I wanted more of this. There are a couple of really important interactions or conversations that I wanted to see on the page, but instead a scene stops right before them and then we jump to a different character's perspective and are told the thing already happened. That was really frustrating for me, especially for the characters that I really liked seeing on the page. I think this is a type of story that I just don't find very interesting and isn't relevant to me. Bizarrely, the book I was reading at the same time as Commonwealth is The Stars Are Legion by Kameron Hurley. I was literally flipping between the two of them on the same day, and I don't know if I've ever read two books at the same time that were more different. The combination is just weird. The Stars Are Legion is Kameron Hurley's newest novel. It is science fiction. It was released in early February, and I know a lot of people have been abuzz about it. I have been hotly anticipating it, and I have mixed feelings on this one, actually. I have nothing bad to say about the book as a whole because I think it is probably Hurley's strongest book, her strongest story so far. She's really come a long way in writing her novels. The characters are good, the plot is good, it's more straightforward and trimmed down. It's like a sleek sci-fi novel. She gets to the point and she keeps you guessing most of the way. And so I just thought it had a lot of strengths in that, and the world building is where I'm like really conflicted. The world building is totally Hurley. If you've read her previous books, especially God's War, you will recognize a lot of the creepy horror, gore, viscous fluids type of stuff she likes to do, plus bugs. This is like God's War taken to the nth degree, and I really do think that it verges on horror. This is why I'm uncomfortable with it. It is so Hurley, it is good, it is unusual. She's really tapped into a form of world building that people love and just isn't the norm. But it was too much for me. Chapter 14, guys. Anybody who's read this knows what chapter 14 is. I felt a little queasy at the end of the book, but it also felt like it was a really good ride. Like, I got what I wanted out of it. And yes, the entire cast is female. This is more badass ladies from Hurley. She really does complicated, strong, and sometimes unlikable female characters very well. I would liken Zan mostly to Nyx from God's War. She is strong, she's a soldier, and she's maybe not like the smartest person in the room sometimes. But she does get things done, and I had to admire her strength, if nothing else. Bridging Infinity, edited by Jonathan Strahan, is a collection of science fiction stories from 2016. This is the fifth and latest installment in the Project Infinity series of anthologies. I'm not exactly sure what the theme of them all is, but they seem to, these stories actually seem to have some really high concept, epic, far future level technology and science in them, that sense of wonder in the far future style of science fiction, which I really enjoyed. I was actually surprised that all of the stories in this were at least okay. There wasn't any story in here that I would rate less than a 3 stars, so it was really, really good. And I also think the variety of stories was pretty pleasant. I'm not going to go into all the individual ones, but I can definitely see why this is one of the most highly rated anthologies of 2016, and there really are a bunch of stories in it that are probably going to be Hugo nominee contenders. I randomly picked up and read this graphic novel, Delilah, Dirk, and the Turkish Lieutenant by Tony Cliff. I've heard this mentioned before. I think Jane from Yes Miss Jane read it relatively recently. This was fun. I really liked the artwork in it, actually. I don't know if I've ever seen Tony Cliff's artwork before, but I just really enjoyed it. I love the characters' facial expressions. I think that's something that I really look for in art and in comics and graphic novels, is characters' emotions and that they're not static all the time. This is about Delilah, Dirk, and the Turkish lieutenant that she picks up on her adventures. She's, what's it say here? a globe-trotting troublemaker, and her interests include swordplay, acrobatics, archery, and mayhem. And while in Turkey, she runs into this lieutenant whose main interest is brewing perfect tea, and they have some adventures. It was fun and sweet. It made me chuckle a little bit. I just didn't feel like much really happened. It focused way more on the male character than on Delilah Dirk, and I don't think I really got to know her well enough in this first story. So I think there's a second volume out already and my library has it, so I'm going to read that too. But yeah, the artwork is great and I liked the two characters. The last thing I have to talk about today is something I just finished listening to like an hour ago, and that is Neil Gaiman's The View from the Cheap Seats. This is selected nonfiction and it includes speeches, talks, essays, book introductions, etc. It's mainly him talking about people he likes that he's worked with or things that he's read and he's loved and music and all that. I liked this collection. It spans such a wide range of topics that there's no way I was going to be interested in all of it, and I found a little bit of it to be repetitive. I was most interested in the first and last sections where he's talking about the value of libraries, what genre is, maybe something about his writing process, and the end was more about Amanda Palmer, his wife, and things like that, which are more recent things actually, including his essay on Syria and his introduction to one of Terry Pratchett's collections. But interestingly, the things I realize now that I really enjoyed, I had already read. I had already read all of these things in other places when they were originally published, so they weren't really new to me. I wonder if this appeals more to die-hard Gaiman fans, but I really do enjoy Gaiman's work, but I think I might enjoy his fiction more than his non-fiction, unless he's speaking about something I personally care very much about, like libraries, reading, and Diana Wynne Jones. That's it for what I've been reading recently. I'm a little tuckered out after filming a whole bunch of videos in a row, so I'm gonna go toddle off now and enjoy the rest of my Sunday. I hope that you have a wonderful weekend and that the coming week treats you well, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye.